Welcome to Coming Out of the Spiritual Closet with your host, me, Brittany Wittig. Join me every week to explore and demystify the world of modern spirituality. Welcome to the inaugural episode of Coming Out of the Spiritual Closet. I'm so happy you're here. Yeah, this podcast has been a long time coming. I feel like when I first started on my spiritual path, I was so overwhelmed by all of the branches of modern spirituality. I mean, there's, Reiki, energy healing, law of attraction, manifestation, all of these philosophical ideas like the multiverse. And it was just a lot at first. It was really hard for me to know where I should even start on this spiritual journey. So what I ended up doing back then was I read a lot of spiritual blogs. And I would read a blog post on a topic, and if it sparked my interest, then I would go research that topic online. A lot of times I would buy a book or two or three on that topic. And what I began to realize in doing that was that all of these branches of spirituality actually have the same core purpose: to help you find your personal power. Because there are no rules in modern spirituality. I am in the driver's seat of my own life in a very profound way. And I was hooked. I am hooked. I absolutely love exploring the world of modern spirituality. And that's what I want to do here with you. I think that this truth that we are in charge of our own lives has been lost in a lot of ways in our modern culture. So that's what we're going to do here with this podcast. We are going to help you find your personal power by investigating the different spiritual branches, the different spiritual topics, finding the ones that light you up. I'll be sharing books and resources on the different topics that really worked for me when I investigated that particular branch of spirituality. So hopefully I'm going to take some of the research out of it for you. You can come and check out these podcast episodes, and when a topic resonates with you, you can investigate it further. So a little background on me. I'm first going to share the moment, and it was a pretty defined moment, when I realized that there must be more going on in this reality than I previously thought. And I consider this the moment when my spiritual awakening kicked into high gear. So I was traveling in Southeast Asia, in the country of Laos, and I was sitting in a Buddhist temple. Now, mind you, this was before I considered myself spiritual. I had never meditated. I was just sitting in this temple as a tourist. And it was quite empty and quiet in the temple, and there were some huge statues of the Buddha in front of me. As I was sitting there, suddenly, my consciousness, my awareness, lifted up and out of my body, and it felt like I was hovering over my body. I looked down and I could see my body, and I looked straight ahead and I was looking right at the face of the Buddha statue. And this only lasted a few seconds because very quickly I got freaked out and shot back into my body. And at the time, it took a few minutes for me to get reoriented back in my body. And at the time, I just thought, what was that? And I left the temple and I shared that story with my partner, who was also, not a spiritually inclined person. We kind of just let it go, but it stuck with me. I kept thinking about it. Like, what was that? Because it was such a profound experience. And then a month later, it happened again in an open-air temple in Cambodia, in the Angkor Wat complex, which is a world-famous complex of temple ruins. So I was sitting in this open-air temple ruin, and the same exact thing happened. At that point, I realized, okay, I had a strong sense that something was trying to get my attention. And that was really the moment when I realized reality might not be what I think reality is. So that was a huge, huge moment. But my awakening actually started years before that. I just didn't realize it. And I think that that's very true for many people. I think that the beginning stages of a spiritual awakening, we don't necessarily connect the dots that were in a spiritual awakening. So my awakening really started in 2010 when my mom was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer that had spread to her brain, and she had to have an emergency brain surgery to remove a big tumor. That left her unable to walk, unable to care for herself. The surgery left her with severe brain damage. And I spent the next year of my life taking care of her. That really kicked off my awakening. I just didn't know it then. But the experience of spending that much time so closely with my mom, who was the closest person in my life, as she was in the process of dying, that really completely shifted my worldview. It made me re-examine my priorities. It was during that time that I began to have some unusual experiences. It started with my tarot cards. I've been reading tarot since I was 16, but up until this period of time when my mom was sick, I always thought of tarot as just a hobby. I didn't think of it as spiritual at all, actually. I just thought it was kind of a fun thing to play around with. But my tarot cards started sending me very, very clear messages. For example, I would pull the same card out of the deck 7 times in a row. Like pull the card, shuffle the deck, pull another card, it's the same card again, 7 times in a row. The odds of that are very, very low. And that happened multiple times, many times during that period of time. I couldn't quite explain it. I kind of just filed those experiences away in the back of my mind and didn't dig too deeply into them. But of course, now in retrospect, I realize back then there was something trying to get my attention. So then when my mom passed away in 2012, I began to receive what felt like communication from her in my dreams and also in signs in my external world. And again, I accepted this. I kept it very private and I sort of filed it away in the back of my mind. But interestingly, it actually took those out-of-body experiences in Asia for me to really start investigating spirituality. I think that some of the early signs of my spiritual awakening were a motivation to change my life. After my mom passed away, I got divorced, moved states. I switched my career. I began traveling full-time and writing a professional travel blog. You know, these were early signs that I was massively changing the world around me. And I think that those were early signs of a spiritual awakening that I just didn't recognize as a spiritual awakening at the time. So that might resonate with some of you if maybe you're experiencing like a real shift in priorities, a real switch up in your life right now. Maybe consider the possibility that you are in the early stages of a spiritual awakening. After those experiences in Southeast Asia, the out-of-body experiences, I basically made it my full-time job to learn everything I could about spirituality. I was very lucky to have a passive income source. I wrote the professional travel blog, and I could work about 10 hours a week on the blog and still bring in a good enough income to live off of. That was super fortunate, and in retrospect, I don't think there are any coincidences. I think it was set up that way for me. I basically put the travel blog on the back burner, and I made it my full-time job to learn everything that I could about spirituality. And what I really was doing, and it's funny to me now, I was trying to figure out what's going on. And if you could see me right now, I'm making air quotes with my fingers because the idea that you can figure out what's going on is comical to me now. Now I realize that there is so much going on in this universe that we as humans can't even comprehend or begin to understand. I'm never going to figure it out, but that was the mission. That was the mission at the time. I wanted to figure out what was really going on in reality. And so I took myself down so many spiritual rabbit holes. I've read hundreds of books about different branches of spirituality. And I've learned a lot. And that's one of the things that I really want to share in this podcast is all of this information that I picked up. And really, I had to do a lot of work to understand a lot of it. And so I want to lay it out in a straightforward, easy to understand way and save you some of that research that I did. Although I did really enjoy the journey. The other thing that I've realized as I have opened up to spirituality in my life, I've had a number of friends in my sphere who are definitely not spiritual, who don't ever talk about spiritual topics. I've had a number of those friends come to me sort of on the down low and say, hey, I've been reading about this spiritual topic or this spiritual idea. What do you think about it? And want to talk about it with me. And so I've realized that there are a lot of spiritually curious people out there that just don't have resources in their life to examine spirituality, or maybe feel a little blocked about examining spirituality. And that's another thing I want to do with this podcast. I want us as a community to really explore these concepts and explore these topics and make it safe and fun to explore these topics. I do have a Facebook group that I've started specifically for this podcast so that we can get together and talk about these topics. It is completely private, so you can do it. You can join it on the down low if that's most comfortable for you. And yeah, there are still people in my personal life that really I don't talk about my spirituality with. So this podcast is really me coming out of the spiritual closet and really opening up about how important spirituality is in my life. I'm so happy to share all of this information with all of you. So if you'd like to connect with me and other spiritually minded people, there are 2 ways to do that. I'm going to put these links in the show notes. Head to my Instagram. I'm part of a really amazing spiritual community there. And I'm also going to link to the Facebook group that I've created where we can discuss whatever spiritual topics we want. So thank you so much for listening to this first episode, and I will be here every week. So check back in and we are going to explore and demystify modern spirituality together. Have a great day.